For joining us today at this very important moment. I want to thank all the allies who have come together today, in particular my colleague Senator Mazie Hirono. We are going to be joined by Senator Patty Murray, Chair of the Senate Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions Committee, Senator Richard Blumenthal, and Senator Amy Klobuchar, with whom I am proud to partner on this important legislation. I also want to acknowledge Senator Tammy Duckworth, who couldn't join us today, but who is a lead partner with us on this bill. The disastrous and deeply partisan set of Supreme Court decisions this term made clear that the fundamental rights of the American people are at risk. Last month, the extremist court took away the right to abortion, a right on which millions of Americans have relied for almost 50 years. But the generational damage to health and safety and freedom did not end with that stolen right. It was just a preview of coming atrocities from this Supreme Court. In his concurring opinion in Dobbs versus Jackson, Women's Health Organization, Justice Clarence Thomas outlined a long-held Republican belief that Americans had too many privacy rights under the Constitution, that the Supreme Court had erred in recognizing those rights, and that the court should take them away, just as it did with the right to abortion. This bears repeating. A sitting justice of the United States Supreme Court is arguing that Americans have too many rights. Justice Thomas urged the court to correct the error it committed when it recognized the right to same-sex marriage in 2015. It told the court to fix the error it made when it recognized the right of Americans to engage in private, consensual sexual activity in 2003. And he said the court got it wrong when it recognized the right of Americans to use contraception in 1965. But it is Justice Thomas and far-right extremists on the court who are wrong. These are all fundamental rights, all based on the right to privacy, and they should remain the law of the land. Justice Thomas's concurring opinion is like a movie trailer for an upcoming horror film that Americans are going to be forced to watch, written, produced, and directed by a captured, illegitimate Supreme Court. The right to contraception is central to an individual's health, to their well-being, to their life, liberty, equality, and economic and social freedom. It is a right grounded in the need and ability to make decisions about one's own body, one's own family, and one's own future. It is a right supported by both Democrats and Republicans. In a poll that came out yesterday, 75% of all Americans said Congress should protect birth control access, including 87% of Democrats and 62% of Republicans. And it is a right that we must make the law of the land so that extremist justices cannot take it away in order to advance a blatantly political agenda. We need to codify these fundamental rights now. That's why I'm standing here with my colleagues to announce that Democrats will attempt to pass on the Right to Contraception Act tomorrow. There is no time to waste. The Right to Contraception Act would codify Supreme Court's decision in the Griswold ruling that recognizes the right to obtain and use contraception. The bill would enshrine that right in federal law, guaranteeing a health care provider's right to prescribe these products and services and information related to them. In short, the Right to Contraception Act would safeguard contraception access and use even if the Griswold ruling were overturned. Several states have already restricted access to contraception by cutting off public funding for it, by defining abortion to include contraception, and by allowing healthcare providers to refuse to provide services related to contraception based on their own personal beliefs. Attacks on healthcare, especially reproductive health, fall hardest on historically marginalized communities, including Black, Indigenous, and other communities of color, LGBTQ people, people with disabilities, poor people, those living in rural and underserved areas, and immigrants. Last week, I proudly watched the House of Representatives pass its version of the Right to Contraception Act by a vote of 220 to 195. And I want to thank all of our partners in the House who led the charge there. I urge my colleagues to co-sponsor and support the Right to Contraception Act. We must make the right to safe and secure reproductive health and freedom the law of the land. And to my anti-choice Republican colleagues, I say this: if you would deprive an American of choosing whether or not to end their pregnancy, how could you also deprive them of the tools to prevent a pregnancy in the first place? Here is the unspoken answer. They want to exert control over the bodies of others, especially the bodies of women. If you don't agree with that, then join me in supporting the Right to Contraception Act with all of my colleagues. We must protect that right. And now